All right, welcome back to another episode of Bracketology. This is your bracketologist Michael Hernan here. I did start recording, but then something just happened. I kind of just cut off recording, so I'm gonna do this again. So I'm gonna kind of pick off where I left off of. So I kind of put some teams here early. So of course we're gonna start with the Midwest region in Buffalo. And my number one seed is Michigan, because Michigan, of course, they are in the Big Ten. They've been really solid. Arizona's been having a rough week, and Michigan, they just keep winning. The only one-loss team in the Power 5, so Michigan keeps winning. They look pretty good right now. I have them as my 1 seed. 16 seed, I have Howard and Bethune-Cookman. They kind of just switched places. Bethune-Cookman had an ugly loss, but I still have them win the SWAC, but I just have Howard and Bethune-Cookman kind of switching places there in that 16 seed. Auburn is my 8 seed here. Auburn, I know they've been struggling, but they kind of had a brutal schedule. That schedule is why I still have Auburn as an 8 seed, but they continue to drop games. You're going to see them go into the bubble, potentially maybe even out of the tournament. 9 seed, I got NC State. They dropped a seed line because of that loss to SMU, and they kind of racked up a couple losses, but other than that, NC State is currently the 9 seed. 5 seed, I have St. Louis. I think St. Louis, is my Atlantic 10 champion. And they just keep winning dominantly as well. So, shout out Robbie Avila. So, yeah, there's St. Louis. And then Yale is my 12 seed for the Ivy League. They defeated Harvard in overtime this weekend. So, they look like they are the team to be in the Ivy League. So, I have Yale as the 12 seed there. 4 seed is St. John's. They kind of had a fight against Providence. Yeah, we'll talk about on the podcast episode, but St. John's has been winning games ever since that brutal non-conference start. They have been winning some basketball games, and now here they are at the 4 seed. 13 seed is High Point, my Big South champion. They continue to win games well. They just completely, utterly decimated Gardner-Webb, 112-89 this past Saturday. It was brutal, but High Point continues to win. My 6 seed here, I got Miami, Ohio, my MAC champion. Oh yeah, this location is Tampa. So Miami, Ohio, me and Dre had an argument about whether they could beat TCU or they could beat UCF. That'll be in the podcast episode as well. But Miami, Ohio, they just keep winning games. They keep controlling what they could control, and that's why I'm my 6th seed right there. And I'm at my 11th seed, UCLA. I had them in my last 4 in the past couple last week, and now, they did get blown out by Michigan on Saturday, but they've been kind of secretly racking up some wins, so I would give UCLA some grace, and other teams have been falling before them, so I'll give UCLA one of the last 4 buys there as an 11 seed. Alright, as we continue on from my previous recording, the 3 seed, my SEC champion right now, Florida. Florida has been rolling. They beat Kentucky on Saturday. They had a nice win. Boogie Flan's on there. Of course, Xavier Lee is starting to turn on. He's been really good for the Gators. But overall, Florida has been playing a lot better basketball as late, and they're playing good basketball at the right time. 14 seed, I have the Big Sky champion, Portland State. Portland State was a 15 seed last week, so good to see Portland State there at the 14 seed. They just keep winning in the Big Sky. They just don't drop games. Got Portland State there at my 14 seed. Next location here we have is Oklahoma City. And with the 7th seed here, I have Villanova. Not Fuca. Villanova. Villanova just keeps continuing to win games secretly, and they're going to keep climbing. They're just going to keep climbing the more they win. Kind of taking advantage of a little weaker Big East conference, but they just keep advantage. They keep racking wins. Lindsey looks good. Brennan looks good. They got some talent on that roster, and I think Villanova's playing some good ball right now. Kevin Willard definitely has them on a good path right now. And then my 10th seed, I have Texas. Texas is just hanging in there. They won a couple of big games. They won a big road game at Missouri. Dalen Swain looked pretty good for the Longhorns there, but Texas, they won a massive one in Missouri, and they were an 11 seed, I believe, last week. Now they jumped up to a 10 seed. So here goes. See the Longhorns climbing, hanging around there at 16-9. There. And my number 2 seed, I have Kansas. Kansas had an interesting week. They beat the best team in the country. They did beat Arizona, the top seed, gave them their first loss of the season. And then Iowa State ran the floor with them this previous Saturday. Interesting because Kansas did not have Darren Peterson when they lost to Arizona, but they did against Iowa State. So that'll be interesting. Does Kansas play well without Darren Peterson? That'll be an interesting storyline, but I still have Kansas as my 2 seed. That Arizona win definitely benefit them for sure. And then my 15 seed, I have my Sun Belt champion, Troy. I don't know. I mean, Troy just lost Saturday. I mean, they're competing with Marshall. Marshall lost Saturday. Does anybody want to win the Sun Belt? They had a 14 seed a couple weeks ago, and now they're down to a 15 seed. I don't think anybody wants to win the Sun Belt. So there's Troy at my 15 seed there. Moving on to the next region, we have the South region, and this will be in Houston. Oh, whoops! I accidentally exited out of my computer there. But anyways, yeah, I go the Whitewater. That was the Whitewater logo for you guys wondering. All right, so our first location in the first round will be Oklahoma City as well. And number 1 seed here is Houston. Houston right now with Arizona losing those previous 2 games. I have Houston now as my Big 12 champion. They've been winning some games. You know, they're one of the best teams in the country. They've been really turning on as of recent. You know, just taking care of business. You know, you got guys like Miles Uzan, Kingston Flemings, and all that stuff. Yeah, I just got a text message for Dre. Yeah, giving me some updates. But anyways, you know, Houston, they look like one of the best teams in the Big 12. So, Houston just keeps winning basketball games, and that's why they are my Big 12 champ right now. But honestly, anything could happen in the Big 12. It is so top-heavy in that league. You know, anything could happen there. And then my 16 seeds here, I have LIU and Vermont. They're another first 4 game. LIU is my NEC champion, and Vermont is my America East champion. LIU has been winning some games, but I think they lost Saturday. They could have won, but LSU just looks like the team to be in this conference. I think they did lose Saturday, but LIU looks like the team to be in the conference right now despite the loss. And then Vermont, I don't know, they're hanging in there. UMBC's on their tail. NJIT is on their tail. Vermont's kind of struggling right now, but they're still there in the America East bid right now, but they got to rack up some wins. Otherwise, UMBC will be coming for them. All right, and then my number 8 seed I have is Clemson. You know, Clemson had a rough week. They were previously a 5 seed last week, but now I have them dropping all the way down to an 8 seed. That Virginia Tech loss hurts, and it hurts bad. And they also lost to Duke. I mean, I guess which kind of not that bad of a loss, but man, that Virginia Tech loss was brutal. And that's why I have Clemson as an 8 seed. They could definitely go up, but you can't just lose to Virginia Tech at home. My 9 seed, I have Iowa. Iowa also had a rough week. They lost on the road at Maryland. Maryland, I know it's a tough place to play, but Maryland has been struggling this year. And for Iowa to lose that game, that does not look good for them. And then, of course, they lost to Purdue. So they dropped 2 seed lines because of that loss. So I have Iowa there as a 9 seed. My 5 seed, I have Illinois. Illinois kind of had a rough week. Of course, they lost to my Badgers. Yes, sir. But they were a 3 seed, but now they're down to 5 seed because of that Wisconsin loss. They did beat Indiana, kind of picked themselves back up, but I could definitely see Illinois getting back to the 4 or 3 seed next week if they could just get some wins and other teams losing ahead of them. But that Wisconsin loss, not the greatest loss. It's a quad 2 loss for the Illini, so I have them as a 5 seed for right now. Number 12 seed, I have Belmont. Oh yeah, this location, San Diego. Belmont is my 12 seed. Belmont just continues to win. They are my Missouri Valley Conference champ. They look like the team to MVC. I don't think I see anybody beating Belmont in the Missouri Valley. They look like the team to beat in that conference. They have been playing some spectacular basketball right now. Then my 4 seed, I got North Carolina. North Carolina, I had them with the 3 seed last week. You know, had a great win against Duke. And then they dropped to win to Miami, Florida. You know, it was a tough game. I understand that, you know, you get an emotional win against Duke, but then you lose to Miami on the road, which makes sense. And then they beat Pitt. So now they're without Caleb Wilson. They did win their first game against Pitt without Caleb Wilson, but that's going to be a mountain to climb for this Tar Heel team, playing without their star-studded freshman in Caleb Wilson. We'll see what North Carolina does, but right now they are my 4 seed there. And then my 13 seed, I have Liberty, my Conference USA champion. They continue to win. They continue to look impressive. I think they're going to win the Conference USA. Sam Houston might give them a run for their money, but right now it's Liberty's conference to lose. All right, my next location, I have Philadelphia. And my 6th seed here is BYU. BYU, they kind of fell off a little bit. They were 7th seed. They kind of won some games last week to kind of get them back to the 6th seed spot. But right now, I'm going to need to start seeing BYU beat some good teams. I think their best win right now is against Wisconsin. So it'd be interesting to see. BYU's definitely got to start building a resume there. They'll have a lot of opportunities because the Big 12 is a tough conference. You got to start winning those big games. 11th seed, I have Georgia. Georgia, they're kind of going down and down and down. They're on the downward trajectory right now, and now they're on the 11th seed in the last 4 byes. So let's see what happened with Georgia, see if they can figure something out. That Oklahoma loss was not great on Saturday. Yeah, it's definitely not, things are not going well in Athens. They are my 11th seed right now. And my 3 seed is Purdue. You know, after losing those 3 straight games, they lost to UCLA, they lost to Indiana there, and then they lost to Illinois. Yeah, UCLA, Illinois, Indiana, those 3 losses. Purdue is starting to win games again. They won a huge road win at Nebraska, and they also got another win against Iowa. That was on the road. Yeah, that was on the road. So Purdue's got 2 quad 1 victories wins, 2 impressive victories for the Boilermakers. So give credit to Purdue. Purdue's winning those 2 games. That was big. They are my 3 seed there. 14 seed, I have ETSU, my SoCon champion. No, ETSU, I'm pretty sure they lost, but Wofford kept losing too. I think the SoCon had a rough week this week for the top teams. So ETSU is going to hang around there in the 14 seed for now. Next location here, I got Portland again. My 7th seed, I have Tennessee. Tennessee's kind of interesting. You know, they have a lot of talent. Of course, you got Nate Ahmet, who's been very solid. Jacoby Gillespie is a good ball player. They kind of been on and off. So right now, they're going to be hanging around that 7th seed for now. See if Tennessee can definitely improve there. Then my 10th seed I have is Ohio State. Ohio State, you know, they came close against Virginia on Saturday. It was a tough game. Not going to reward them, nor not going to lower them. I think they were an 11 seed, but they're just barely a 10 seed now. So yeah, there is Ohio State there at my 10 seed. Their net ranking just continues to go up and up. You know, they have a great chance against Wisconsin Tuesday. Yeah, that'll be a tough game for the Badgers, but we'll get to the Badgers in a moment. So Ohio State is my 10 seed. 2 seed, I got my WCC champion Gonzaga. That was a big win at Santa Clara. That was huge. Santa Clara was winning the WCC regular season, the standings. They're on top of the standings. But now with Gonzaga winning that game in Santa Clara, they are now back controlling the WCC. That was a big win for Gonzaga. I mean, Graham Ike looked impressive in that one. He had 21 points and 15 rebounds. I mean, Gonzaga looked good. And they're kind of a weaker Gonzaga team than normal, but because, you know, or the WCC might have gotten stronger. But that was a big win for the Zags, of course, for Mark Few. So Gonzaga is my 2 seed. 15 seed, the ASUN representative, Austin Peay. Austin Peay continues to hang around there in the 15 seed and just keep minding their own business. And yeah, in the ASUN. All right, and that is my South region. And we're going to go to our next region here. And this is the East region. Washington, D.C. Yeah, that looks weird. And first location here we have is Greenville. With that, the number 1 seed in this region, Duke. Duke, you know, ever since losing to North Carolina, they got some good wins. They did beat Clemson. I think with the Arizona loss, definitely falling there. I got Duke as a 1 seed. They're going to take advantage of their opportunities. So there is Duke. Oh, shoot, I messed up. This side is supposed to go over here. Let me just do that real quick. So yeah, Duke. I'll keep simultaneously changing this. So Duke is over here. Sorry guys, I messed up here. Okay. And this is Oklahoma City. So yeah, Duke is my 1 seed. Oh wait, Duke is not supposed to be down here. Duke is supposed to be right here. I'm messing up. I apologize, guys. It's a Monday. It's a Monday, guys. Stick with me here. All right. I'll continue to update this while I keep talking about these teams down here. And then my 16 seed I have is UT Martin from the OVC. You know, UT Martin. You know, they just continue. You know, they stumbled against Morehead State, but they've been winning their games that they should have been ever since. UT Martin definitely, they are a slower paced style of a basketball team, so they could give a team like Duke like fits, or could have given them struggles. But right now, I have UT Martin winning that OVC conference there. All right, and then my 8 seed here I have is St. Mary's. St. Mary's, of course, they just keep winning games. You know, they did just lose. They did just lose to Gonzaga a couple weeks ago. It was a close one, but you know, other than the Gonzaga loss, they've been controlling what they've been controlling, and they've just been winning. They're 12-2 in the conference, putting themselves in a good position in a stronger WCC this year. So I'd like to see what St. Mary's is doing. I have them there currently as my 8 seed. And then my 9 seed here, I got Indiana. Indiana's been playing some better basketball as of late. You know, of course, that Wisconsin win, which may or may not be the refs, but they had a Purdue win earlier, but they did just lose to Illinois, but I'm not going to count that against them because, you know, it is a tough place. Try texting me again. But Indiana has put themselves in a better place with racking up some wins, and having some tough losses as well, which I'm not going to count against them. But anyways, Indiana has been playing some good basketball as of recent, and they're getting better. I have them as my 9 seed there. And then my next location here I have is Tampa once again. 5 seed here I have Vanderbilt. You know, Vanderbilt has been on and off ever since entering SEC play, but I'll give them credit. I thought Vanderbilt was going to be that type of team where, you know, they hit the conference play and they're going to fall apart, but nonetheless, they have their moments there in conference play. So I like Vanderbilt there as a 5 seed. I don't have them as my SEC champion anymore, but I still have them playing some good basketball. So I like Vanderbilt there as a 5 seed. All right, I have successfully put this region over there now. Oh wait, this is the East region. This is not the South region. This is the South region right there. All right, enough of hearing me typing with that stuff. All right, so now it's all fixed. This is the number 1 overall seed, number 2, number 3. All right, let's continue. And then at my 12 seed, I have McNeese. They are my Southland Conference champ. Stephen F. Austin fans, I know you're getting very angry. Oh, we have the better record. But here's the thing. McNeese has a better net ranking, and they have a better resume. You know, they both split their games. McNeese won in McNeese. Stephen F. Austin won in Stephen F. Austin. But I just think McNeese has a better resume, and I just think they're the better team right now. So that's why I got McNeese at his 12 seed. You know, Stephen F. Austin, if you're still mad, keep winning. Just keep winning, and I'll put you guys in. Well, McNeese has got to lose, but just keep winning. Lumberjack fans, just keep winning. That's all I ask of y'all. All right, and then my 4 seed in this region I have is Texas Tech. Texas Tech had a solid week this week. You know, they defeated Arizona in the McHale Center. Very tough it's a Monday, guys. I apologize. Very tough environment to win for the Red Raiders. Of course, JT Toppin looks really good right now. He could definitely be their X Factor, see if they can make a run this tournament. But right now, I got Texas Tech as a 4 seed, put themselves in a good position there. 13 seed, Utah Valley. Of course, the controversial Utah Valley, because they're not paying their exit fee out of the WAC. So, very turmoil there. So, that'll be unfortunate to see if they come out of that conference as a 13 seed. Utah Valley's got a whole lot of problems to deal with other than stuff in the basketball court. But, basketball team looks very well. So, I have them as my 13 seed there. The next location I have is St. Louis. 6th seed, I got Louisville. There you go, Louisville fans. I didn't forget you again. So Louisville again, they've just been secretly winning games. Just hanging around there. I got Louisville as my 6th seed there, and then my 11 seeds here. This is a first 4 matchup. These two teams are in my last 4 in. You see the TNM. This is San Diego State and Texas A&M. Texas A&M has been having a brutal stretch as of recent. They kind of just been losing games, so that ranking's been dropping. San Diego State, it seems like every time I've been doing a bracketology this year, they're always in the last 4 in. I don't know. I guess they just like to live life that way or something like that. But I got San Diego State as an 11 seed. Texas A&M, it's been brutal. They've been losing some games. They are my 11 seed there. My 13th seed I have is Nebraska. Nebraska, they did just lose to Purdue. They kind of been struggling a little bit, but Nebraska's just in their slow season right now. Every team goes through those stretches where they just struggle. They're cold, and Nebraska's dealing with that right now. I mean, they started off 20-0, and now I believe they lost 3 games since that stretch. It happens. It's college basketball. I do think Nebraska will pick themselves out. I think Rick Mast, I think he was sick a little bit against Illinois, but I think he's starting to get healthy again. They have a good squad, Connor Seachin, former Badger, Burke Bouillon-Tunchel, Peyton Sanborn. They got a good squad over there. I trust Fred Hoiberg, but they're just struggling right now, and that's okay. Every team goes through that. And then number 14, I have St. Thomas, Minnesota. They are my Summit League champ. Them and North Dakota State for the Summit League right now is being a dogfight, and it is going to be fun to watch in the conference tournament. But right now, I got St. Thomas, Minnesota over the edge. I think they just got some better quality wins. I think both of them kind of lost last week, but I still got the Tommies. They're winning the Summit League. 7th seed, I got Kentucky, the Wildcats. Now, Kentucky, they've been starting to... They had a big win against Tennessee, but they did just lose to Florida. I'm not going to count that against them. So I got Kentucky there as my 7th seed there, just hanging out. 10th seed, I got SMU. SMU kind of hangers. Oh, yeah, this location is St. Louis again. Yeah, but the 10th seed, I got SMU. SMU, they did just get a big win against NC State. They did, but I just got them hanging around as a 10 seed, just hanging out. Just taking care of what they're doing. So there's SMU as my 10 seed there. 2 seed, I have Iowa State. Iowa State has had a volatile week. They lost on the road at TCU. Then they come back to the Hilton Coliseum and defeated Kansas, who just defeated Arizona. That's just how crazy the Big 12 has been this year. But there's Iowa State at my 2 seed. They're going to hang around there right now. Could have had a chance at the 1 seed if they just would have beat TCU, but I definitely get it. TCU is, you never know what's going to happen with that team. And then my last team here in this region, this is supposed to be it. Okay. And then my last team in this region here I have is my Horizon League champion, Wright State. Right now it's between them and Oakland. I just think Wright State has been the more consistent team, and plus Wright State did demolish Oakland in Oakland. So I have Wright State there as my 15th seed, as my Horizon League champ. Then our last region here, we got the West region, which will be in San Jose. Another text. Campus stuff. All right, and then 1 seed, Arizona. Oh yeah, the location here is San Diego. Arizona is my 1 seed. They are not my Big 12 champ anymore, but they kind of had a rough week. I'm still going to give them a 1 seed because, they were undefeated, but then they just lost 2 close games. But I'm going to give them the last 1 seed, though. I still think they're a very good basketball team. They've just been struggling a little bit. They're going to kind of go through that season as well. Every team goes through that, except for Miami, Ohio, for some reason. But anyways, my 16th seed, I have Marist. Marist has been losing quite a bit. Arguments could be said, oh, what about Merrimack? Merrimack beat them. I still think Marist has a better resume right now. I mean, if Marist continues to lose and Merrimack continues to win, I'll put them on here. But right now, Merrimack, I'm going to have the same conversation as Stephen F. Austin fans. Win. Just keep winning. You gotta build your resume. It's not about if you beat this team, beat this team, beat this team. If that's the case, New Orleans, or I mean, if we're talking about beating teams, then who is a team on here that's had a bad loss? I'm gonna put TCU on here later. So let's say, St. Louis lost. Oh yeah, St. Louis lost to Stanford. It's like, we're gonna put Stanford on here because it's St. Louis. No, St. Louis has a better resume. But that probably was a bad argument. But Merrimack, you just gotta continue to win. I'll put you in on here sometime. But right now, I still have Marist. 8 seed, I have Santa Clara. They did just lose a tough one to Gonzaga, but I think that boosts their resume that they're able to compete with Gonzaga. That means they can compete with the best in college basketball. I have Santa Clara as my 8th seed. So, Badger fans, you're probably not going to be happy where I'm going to put you here. 9 seed, Wisconsin. I love my Badgers, but here's it. They were in my last 4 in last week, so now they're up to my 9 seed. So they kind of jumped quite a bit. They had one of the greatest weeks in college basketball. They beat Illinois and they beat Michigan State. Wisconsin continues to play like this. Plus they got Ohio State and Iowa. They win those 2 games. They're going to continue to jump even more in this bracketology. But anyways, the Badgers, 2 huge wins, 2 huge jumps. So there you go. I got Wisconsin now as my 9 seed. They look like they're going to be in the NCAA tournament with those wins there. They're a lot more comfortable there than just a 9 seed. I'll definitely say that. Next location here is Buffalo. My 5 seed here is Arkansas. Now, Arkansas, they've just been winning their games. Darius Acuff has looked very good for the Razorbacks. Definitely put on a show against Auburn. Arkansas, they just continue to win games, and I got them at the 5 seed there. 12 seed, I have Tulsa. Tulsa just lost a brutal game to Wichita State, but I think it's between them and South Florida. Shout out Miles Barnstable, though. But Tulsa, it's gonna be between them and South Florida. One of those two is gonna win the American Athletic. South Florida fans again, we didn't put us in there, but again, I just think Tulsa has the better resume, and overall, I just think they're the better team right now. South Florida, you should go beat Tulsa. Recommendation. 4 seed, I got Michigan State. Michigan State's been having a rough couple weeks. Yes, they did beat Illinois, but they did lose to Minnesota, and they got clobbered by Wisconsin, of course. So I got Michigan State as a 4 seed there. They kind of dropped a little seeds there. 13 seed. All right, UNC Wilmington fans, you can be happy now. I put you guys in again. I put Hofstra in last week, but Hofstra has lost a couple games. UNCW has been winning, and they look like they have the better resume again. So I'm going to put UNCW in there. I think they'll probably be in there for quite a while too. I don't think I'm going to put Hofstra above them again, unless if Hofstra beats them in the CAA tournament. All right, and then next up we're going back to Greenville. 6 seed, Bama, Alabama. Alabama's an interesting team to me. They're a lot better than what their record says, but Alabama's gonna kind of been hanging around there. They're my 6 seed. This is a fair placement for the Tide. I have Alabama. All right, and then next I have my last 4 in, and that is New Mexico in TCU. TCU had a huge week this week. They beat Iowa State, and then they won a gritty game at Oklahoma State. That was a tough one for the Horned Frogs to win. They did, and TCU, I have them now in the tournament. Big win for TCU, and also same as San Diego State. New Mexico's just been hanging around the first 4 every bracketology since, but how about that? TCU is now in the tournament. I have them in the tournament. That was big wins over Iowa State and Oklahoma State. Shout out Jaden Pierre. He's been playing some good basketball recent. 3 seed, I have Virginia. Virginia has been silently just winning games in the corner. They kind of had 2 close games this week. Barely beating Florida State and then barely beating Ohio State. But Virginia, they just keep running the table. They keep winning games that they're supposed to win. So I got the Cavs. They're my 13 seed. 14 seed, I got Hawaii, my Big West champ. Yeah, Hawaii, they dropped a seed. They were a 13 seed last year, but I think that's just mainly because of the rise of UNC Wilmington rather than Hawaii themselves. But I still think Hawaii is the team to beat in the Big West. But I think they did lose to CSU Northridge, I'm pretty sure. But anyways, my last location here is Philadelphia. And then my 7 seed here I have is Utah State from the Mountain West. Utah State just continues to win games. They jumped the seed line. They were in an 8 seed last week. Now here they are at a 7. There is Utah State as my Mountain West champ. And my 10 seed I have is Miami, Florida. Miami, Florida had a huge win against North Carolina. So they're kind of getting more comfortable there in the tournament. I still have them as a 10 seed there for the Hurricanes. And then my 2 seed here, I have UConn, my Big East champion. UConn has been playing some better balls they haven't really been. They just won this week. They barely beat Georgetown. They did lose to St. John's a week ago, but UConn, just hanging on to that 2 seed right there. And then my last team right here I'm going to put down is Navy. Navy jumped a seed line. They jumped Marist because Marist kept losing. Navy kept winning. They won a big game against Colgate. Colgate's one of the teams that's always been historically good in the Patriot League, but Navy got a big win there. They are now a 15 seed in my bracketology. And there we have it. There is my bracketology. You can see the whole bracket here. And now we're going to do the last moments here. We're going to go through the conference breakdown. So, of course, the headliners are, of course, the Big Ten and the SEC. Each have 10 teams in. The ACC has 8. They're in third there. The Big 12, very top heavy. They have 7 teams in. Of course, you got those Big 6. The Big 6 being Houston, being Arizona, being Kansas, Iowa State, BYU, I would consider as a big team. And the Big 12, and of course, Texas Tech. Yeah, Texas Tech right there. And then I had UCF in the tournament, but they've been losing games. I'll get the UCF as my explain my bubble. But now I have TCU in. So there's my Big 12 teams. And then Big East only has 3. They've been slacking this year. And the WCC and Mountain West has 3 teams in. Even though 2 of those 3 teams in the Mountain West are in the last 4 in, which they have been for a while. But looking at my last 4, or looking at the bubble, my last 4 buys, I have Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, and UCLA. I explained why they are there. Last 4 in, I have San Diego State, Texas A&M, New Mexico, and TCU. Down to the bottom, again, explain why they're there. And now to my first 4 out. So my first team to talk about VCU. VCU's been winning games. They are the first team out of the tournament. If they could get in, Atlantic 10 could potentially be a 2-bid league if VCU ends up winning the conference tournament or anybody else does. VCU's kind of hanging around there in that first 4 out. If they were in any other conference, they'd be in this tournament as a auto bid. And I got Baylor. Baylor's been having a tough conference, or Baylor's been having a tough schedule, hanging around there at 13-12. Which they got, how in the world did they in the first 4 out? They just had a brutal schedule, but they need to start racking up wins if they want to get in this tournament. And I got USC. USC, again, their net ranking is pretty poor. Their best win is Wisconsin, so they got to get some better wins under their belt if they want to get into the NCAA tournament. And then UCF will last round out the first 4 out. They had a rough week. They lost to West Virginia at home. That was a game that they had to win, but that loss there against West Virginia definitely hurt them. And now they're on the wrong side of the bubble. Then my next 4 out, I have Seton Hall. Again, Seton Hall, they just haven't had that very many impressive wins for me to put them in this tournament. But I have Seton Hall there in the next 4 out. And I got Washington, the 13-13 team like how. Washington was in my first 4 out, but that loss to Penn State was just brutal. And they're probably just going to continue to go downhill there. West Virginia is now in the bubble. They're in the next 4 out. That was a big win against UCF. I have West Virginia there. And then Virginia Tech rounding out the next 4 out. Virginia Tech's interesting. They beat Clemson in Clemson, and then they got demolished by Florida State. Virginia Tech is an anomaly. I have no idea what's going on with them, but yeah, there's Virginia Tech running out my next 4 out. That'll do it for this episode of Bracketology. Thank you all for tuning in to this week of Bracketology. There'll be more stuff in the way, more podcast episodes. And yes, stay tuned. I'll try every Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. It just depends on what's going on. But I'll try to aim for Monday like today. So thank you all so much for tuning into this Bracketology. I'll see you in the next one.